Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright Jr., the founder and host of this show. I'm absolutely excited to bring you another episode of a show that seeks to provide you the very best leaders that I can find from all across the United States. Tonight's guest, of course, is no exception to that rule. Tonight, I have the pleasure of interviewing and talking with one of my fraternity brothers who has done some amazing work in the field of education for many, many years. In educational leadership, he is considered to be a leader amongst leaders in our profession. My guest tonight is Dr. Anthony D. Jackson. Anthony D. Jackson is the superintendent of Chatham County Schools in central North Carolina. Chatham County Schools is one of North Carolina's fastest growing districts, serving 10,000 plus students in 20 schools with about 1,500 employees. During Dr. Jackson's 30-year educational career, it also includes time that he served as a teacher assistant, teacher, administrator at all three levels, a central office administrator, and a superintendent in rural, urban, and suburban districts. During his career, Dr. Jackson received numerous awards and commendations, including but not limited to being named the North Carolina Central Region's Superintendent of the Year in 2014. In 2017, Dr. Jackson received the prestigious Friday Medal for his leadership with implementing technological innovation in school systems in North Carolina. Also in 2019, July of 2019, Dr. Jackson was named the North Carolina Central Region Superintendent of the Year. And in November of that same year, 2019, I was present when he was named the 2020 North Carolina Craig Phillips Superintendent of the Year for the state of North Carolina. Dr. Jackson has a Bachelor of Science degree from East Carolina University, a master's degree from North Carolina Central University, and a doctorate degree in education from Walden University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He currently serves on several local and state boards. Dr. Jackson serves as a thought partner and mentor to new and novice superintendents throughout the state of North Carolina. And he serves as an adjunct professor in the master's and doctoral programs at North Carolina State University and High Point University. Dr. Jackson holds membership in many professional and civic organizations, including Rotary International, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and the Sigma Pi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Dr. Jackson is married to Dr. Tawana Allen Jackson, who is a professor at High Point University in North Carolina. He has 2 adult children and 1 grandchild. He enjoys singing, playing the piano, listening to jazz, fitness, traveling, and spending time with his family. And at this time, I'd like to welcome my fraternity brother and good friend, Dr. Tony Jackson.
Hey, how we doing, Dr. Wright? Good to see you. Good to be here with you.
Good to see you, my brother, and it's good to have you here on the Wright Experience. We've been trying to get this done for a long time, and so I'm finally glad to get you up here.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jackson, we're going to start off by giving you an opportunity, if you will, to talk to us about the Chatham County School District and some of the wonderful things that I know that you've got going on in that district.
Well, Dr. Wright, Chatham County Schools is what I like to call one of the hidden gems in North Carolina. It's a fast-growing school system that sits pretty much in the center of everything. Our district touches the borders of 11 counties. We actually share borders with, and so we like to think that Chatham is at the center of everything that's happening all around us. We're a fast-growing region. We have a school system that has I get to stand on the shoulders of giants. I get to follow excellent leadership. We've had great leaders in Chatham. In my year there, I joined that staff, that team a year ago. We have worked diligently to build out a comprehensive strategic plan, which we call One Chatham, which has been a real focus of my work. It's a large county. Chatham is about 700 square miles. And so Historically, they've operated with this side of Chatham and that side of Chatham, and our role now is to say that one Chatham will be centrally the work that we're doing. So regardless of where you live in Chatham County, we're going to ensure that you and your child receive the best education possible. We're focusing on becoming what we like to call a AAA school system, where students can focus on academics, athletics, or the arts, and that through those pathways, they will be able to find great and prosperous futures, and that every child will be able to find success on one of those roads. We have strong programs historically that have been there. We're expanding those programs. AVID is a huge program in the district. We're expanding that program now to include all of our secondary schools. And most importantly, dual languages. We're unique in that we offer biliterate programs from K all the way through 12, not just foreign language programs. So it's a great place. I really do believe that I am, in fact, very fortunate to serve there at this time in history. We are growing. We are in the midst of probably some of the fastest growth in North Carolina in terms of new industry coming in. We have a electric car manufacturing company, the first one on the East Coast and in the United States, the largest economic deal in the country that will bring somewhere in the neighborhood of 18,000 jobs. We have FedEx is coming there shortly. We've got Coca-Cola coming, and we've got yet to be announced industry. We're projected to double in size in the next 10 years. And so that's exciting work. So while we're having to, plan for growth, we're also planning for grit. And that's to prepare our kids to go out, face the world, and come back and give to their community. So, those are just some of the highlights. I have a great team. I'm very, very fortunate, very, very lucky I believe, to be tasked to carry this mantle at this point in the history of this community.
It sounds like you have some amazing opportunities for children and for the community moving forward, and that's what this business is about: preparing young folks for their next assignment post high school. So that's great. So how many high schools there?
Right now, we have 4 traditional high schools and one early college.
Okay, very good, very good. Dr. Jackson, you've done some extensive work in mentoring and leading superintendents, new leaders. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things that, if there are people who are aspiring to be a superintendent what are some things that you would talk to them about in terms of preparation items that they need?
Yeah, I think first, and I get to mentor, but I also get to teach the course of superintendency at university. And one of the things I tell people is to know why you want to do this work, and be real clear that you understand not only why you're doing this, but why. It's your responsibility to do it well. There are a lot of people who want to do this work, and I just say, just be clear about why. I don't think you'll have to hunt very far to find an opportunity to do it these days. I think there are people who will hire you to actually come in and sit in this chair. But I do believe that you've got to be clear about your compelling why. The second thing I do believe is that you have to have all the requisite skills. I encourage people to take all of the steps to the superintendency. One of the things that I enjoy most about the work is that I have a context for the decisions that I make. I was a teacher assistant. I worked in a building. I led a building. I worked at the district level and had to lead adults and deliver on the vision and mission of the district. I've had division responsibilities. I've been the associate superintendent where I've had to be the next in command in the district, and before I got to the superintendency. And so I think I tell people, if you aspire to do this work, fill your bucket first. And then I encourage people, don't try to get here so fast. My grandmother used to say this to me, years ago, and it makes sense now. If you get to the party early, you have to stay late. And so a
Right.
lot of people, we don't be in a hurry to get here. There's a lot of work to do in the district where you can have value. And the superintendent is just one seat at the table. Find wherever you are, make ways or at least explore ways to add value to the work. But more importantly, be committed to the long haul. This is my 34th year. I'm starting my 34th year in education. And I say to people, you've got to have some level of staying power in this work. Be
Right.
committed to staying and doing work in those places where you're needed, not necessarily where you want to be. I think sometimes we have to understand that there are places that we're needed, and they don't always align to those glamorous places where we want to be. So that means that some of us have to serve small districts, and some of us have to serve large districts, and some of us have to serve in secondary roles, but be comfortable serving. And not so much worrying about all of those other things. And so I tend to approach the mentoring piece with aspiring leaders uh, through a lens of service. Be willing to serve and do what people need you to do. And ultimately, kids will win, and you will feel validated that your why has, in fact, touched what they need at that moment.
Because service is service is service. And so
Every day of the week.
if I'm really in it for service, then it shouldn't matter so much where I am
That's
as
right.
to the fact that service is being done. I love that. And then I also heard you talk about, and I think that's important to drive home. A lot of our young adults now want to get to the top tomorrow, and what you talked about is there's a process to get to those ultimate roles. So I think that's amazing insight there. Dr. Jackson, you've spent a career now that spanned to my knowledge, state of Virginia, state of North Carolina, DC. I think that's where you started. So you've had some different experiences. So talk to us about some of your aha moments, if you will, in your career. Some of the things that you're really excited about.
Well, I think there are probably three major aha moments.
Okay.
And if I were to look over the body of work, I would say that the greatest aha for me is that there's a thread that flows through every school community that I've ever served, and and that's parents want us to partner with them to help them deliver on their hopes and dreams for their children. And
Right.
once I came to terms with that it wasn't about programs that I wanted to implement or me getting any accolades for work that I do, and realized that my real value was helping parents uh, realize the hopes and dreams for their children. Every parent, I've yet to find a parent who didn't believe that their child should have a life that was better than theirs. And
Mhm.
so once that became kind of one of my core driving values, that I wanted to be that person to help parents deliver that, because it's legacy. That's what you're helping people do, deliver on family legacy. Then I became, I believe, a far more effective leader for them. So that was a great aha moment. The second aha moment for me, I think professionally, was back in early 2000s when I left the traditional public school setting and went into the charter school world for about 5 years. Uh,
Okay.
and so I learned a valuable lesson there that um, um, and I share this every time I launch a principal into a school. I like to say when I hand off a principal to a staff, because I like to do that myself as superintendent. I like to go in and formally, what I like to say is hand this principal off to a staff and
Right.
charge them to take care of this principal. But the one thing I say to every principal, every leader that I get the opportunity to take to the board table and recommend is that you have your pathway to success is simple: listen, learn, lead,
Hmm.
in that order. in that order. I really encourage them not to go out of order. Because I think that's what's happened in this work. We spend a lot of time trying to make our mark and we miss the boat because we have to listen first and
Right.
understand. And I had to challenge myself to do that. Going into Chatham, after being in a district for 6 years, I came to Chatham. And so I told them, I promised them this year, 1 full year, we did nothing but listen. And that meant that I had to resist the urge to do a lot of stuff that my instincts wanted me to do because I was still listening and learning about the community, about their expectations, about what their hopes and dreams were. So it was listening and learning and resisting that desire to really just kind of do something for the sake of doing something. And so now after a year, I built some trust capital with all of those people who are there. So now I can begin to talk about hopes and dreams in an aggregate way and begin the process of leading. Um, and so that was a very clear aha moment for me. And I learned that going into the charter school, where I learned that in the traditional school setting, we didn't listen a lot. We were, and we only started listening when we started to lose market share and we start to lose enrollment and we start to lose, and people start to challenge what we do. But that has to be a very valuable part. And I'm not talking about that passive listening. I'm talking about
Right.
being intentional and listening to what people say, because at the end of the day, I always tell people what we come up with, you should see something in there that you recognize from the conversations that we've had. And then I think the final real aha moment is that, and I learned this through the pandemic, and that's that unfortunately we've moved to a time where grace has a shelf life. Uh,
Okay.
where people espouse daily that they are big supporters of education and that they trust their leaders and they do all that. But when we were stress tested under the pressures of under a global pandemic, we cracked. And we were initially when we were all in that moment. Everybody, the schools were and leaders were the bread and butter. But then when it got tight and everybody decided to go to their own corners and I want what I want, what I want, then grace had a shelf life, and we're living that now because we're talking. Everything is spoken in the deficit language now, learning loss and
Right.
kids behind, and so I often say this. The lesson for me is, let's stop all of the talking and behave in a way that our kids will be proud of us and not that we'll be proud of them. So I say to my staff all the time, you can't talk your way out of situations you behave yourself into. You just can't. And
Right.
so we have now behaved a way now throughout this whole pandemic that we now have to kind of say, all that talk, you can't tell me that kids are important and do some of the things that potentially I see us doing, like ignoring the fact that our kids need social and emotional support.
That's right.
You can't say that schools and educators are important and treat our teachers the way I'm seeing our teachers being treated. You can't say schools have to be places where kids, are encouraged to be curious and learn all kinds of things, and then have some of the conversations, some of the public discourse I see us having in education. I just think we've behaved ourselves now into a place where we're going to have to reconcile that at some point and get back. So that's been an aha moment that at this point in the work that unfortunately after COVID, we're forever changed.
Yeah.
We're going to be different afterwards.
Yeah.
Those are
And that's an unfortunate yet a fortunate thing. We probably needed to change and do some of the things that you're talking about. So
Sure.
I think that's outstanding. I know I see it just about every morning on Twitter. You've done some significant work around fitness, and you've kind of led the charge amongst school leaders about taking care of the body and making sure that you're prepared, not only mentally but physically. So talk to us a little bit about that, and maybe what inspired you to do that, and then ultimately the advice that you would give to leaders to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, and that's pretty simple. I think this work is hard enough
Right.
when you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible when you're not.
Right.
And so after having my own health crisis in this work, I recognized that I was giving so much to everybody else and giving and not even giving back to myself. I was just taking what was left. And so that's unfair. It's unfair. And as leaders, the first thing you have to know is that if you're not healthy, you're not whole, you can't lead. Because at the moment that those people who want to see you or who are planning to attack you in this work, they're waiting for that moment to see you at your weakest. And that's when you will be most open to any of those kinds of external pressures that could crack you or break you. So I made a commitment to myself about 8 years ago that I was going to give back to myself, and that I was going to do so unapologetically. And I started walking. And from a walk, I moved to a trot. From a trot, I moved to a walking trot. And from a walking trot, I got to a run. And so I try to run somewhere in the neighborhood now of 30 to 50 miles a week. And that's just what I do for me. You don't have to run. You don't have to walk. Do something for you. Because my belief is that just that gift to myself every day gives me the strength, gives me the clarity to go forward. And then again, I don't want to ever be considered hypocritical. We tell kids all the time that to be your best and to come to school and be at your best. Then we have to model that not only for our kids but for our staffs. But most importantly, I had to come to terms with a very simple understanding, and it was that the superintendency is what I do. It's not who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once I came to terms with that, I believe that's why I can get up at 4 in the morning and I run at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Because I recognize that if I can go and be superintendent for 8, 9 hours a day, 15, 16 hours a day, I can be Tony for an hour and a half.
Right.
If I can give all that other time to everybody else, I'm not gonna in any way complain or apologize for taking an hour for myself or an hour and a half for myself to just do nothing but be with myself. And if I run, if I trot, if I walk, if I just sit and think, if I listen to music, I believe you have to do something that feeds you, that feeds your soul. And I had to come to that because I didn't start there.
Right. Sure.
I really didn't start there. I had to grow to that, and after many years of trying to do it the other way, I recognize I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. And I think had I started this years ago, I may have been a different leader early on in my career. Who knows? But you've got to take care of yourself. And to every single leader, you don't have to apologize for doing that. In fact, my school board and we made a commitment when I came to Chatham that was just a part of who I am. They encouraged me to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
We have built norms around self-care. As I built my contract with this board, we talked about self-care. And when that they wouldn't bother me after hours unless it was an emergency, that they don't call, and we don't execute work on the weekends if it's not necessary, and that they're going to do everything in their power to ensure that I can do those things, and they would never get in the way of my self-care. And that's how I knew it was the right place for me,
Right.
because this is the first board that's really been open to that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think superintendents have to do that
Right.
and as they begin to go into new roles. And if you've not done that, you need to have that conversation with your new board too, sir.
Okay. All right. I got you. I got you, Brother Jackson.
That's my mentoring of you tonight.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. So take care of self so that you can be your best self for others. That's what I'm really hearing you saying, which is awesome. And I will take that advice for sure. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, because I think this is important to hear a good veteran superintendent's perspective on this. We've got a shortage of what I call direct and indirect instructional employees in this country, really. And what I'm talking about is, yes, in the classrooms, but also support folks. You know, we're just catching it right now. So, what are some of the things that we need to do to make sure that that we restore ourselves? What is it that we need to do to get folks back into this glorious profession that you and I love?
Well, just a couple of things, and I had this conversation with our board recently and with professionals in this district. The first thing I think we have to do is reclaim the profession.
Uh-huh.
We have, in essence, in a lot of ways, given away the profession to everybody knows better what we should be doing than those who actually know the work. And while and it's simply because they've had experience as a consumer of the product. And so I think the first thing we've got to do as the professionals is to reclaim the profession.
Mhm.
Uh, while doctors and lawyers, they appreciate your opinion, they own their profession.
Right.
You go to them and they are able to exercise and practice their craft based on their training. In education, we operate by committee. Everybody has to agree or we don't do it. So I'm saying let's reclaim the profession and say and be respectful of the fact that there are people in this work who have given their lives to it. They know what to do. And while it might not be perfect, just like a doctor's diagnosis might not be perfect, we have to trust that they are, in fact, they have the tools to help us elevate the game. So we have to own the profession. The second thing I think we have to do is an internal.
Okay.
I think we have to stop slicing the pie so thinly. And what do I mean by that? We spend a lot of time in education talking about every subgroup as if it were the total, instead of talking about educators. We are all educators, whether I call our bus drivers, I call them the ambassadors of first impression. I call our food service people. Those are the folk who are the first models and exemplars of love, because most people show love through food, and they feed them. And then our teacher, but we have teacher appreciation and TA appreciation and this group's appreciation, and we start slicing and cutting each other up, as opposed to we're all educators. As if you're a lawyer, there's a respect of the profession that you're a lawyer. Not you're not a trial lawyer, you're not a civil lawyer, you're not that's your area of specialty. You're a lawyer.
Mhm.
I think we've gotten away from we're educators, and I think we've allowed people to divide us
Mhm.
internally. It was funny here in North Carolina. We had a pay inequity issue around student performance and how it impacts principal salaries. And so I believe that the state superintendent and the state board have come up with at least a short-term correction of that. And it was just amazing to me how to me, that was a celebration that we were able to correct that. But immediately I saw on social media where we had folk or teachers, coming after that decision around, well, what about us? As opposed to celebrating that we were able to make sure that those principles were taken care of, and that and so we needed to pull together on that and not separate ourselves on that. And I wish that we would learn that we've got to stop bending to external pressures for us to separate. We're educators. I didn't come to the work to be a superintendent. I came
Right.
to the work to be an educator. I will always be an educator first. So, it's just, so I've changed things in my district. So instead of a teacher advisory and a classified advisory we have an educator advisory where we have representation from both. And so, because I do believe that we have to start owning the profession. And then I think that the last thing is, I say this to our staff here in Chatham, and I've said it in other districts. I don't know about you, but this profession has treated me well.
Absolutely.
And so I tell people I refuse to embrace the henny penny approach to public education that the sky is falling. Here's what I know, and I say this: if this profession has been good to you, if your district has been good to you, if you then you have a responsibility to tell someone, because I think we have given up our responsibility to be good ambassadors for this work. And so sometimes the worst things that come on that come out about our profession comes from inside. And so I encourage everybody: if this has been a good profession for you, tell someone. You don't have to look for the people who are going to tell about the other stories if it wasn't good. But there are too many people who have given their entire lives to this work, who should be telling the story of why this is a great profession. And then I believe that we begin to tell the story to the next generation why they should do this. And so right now, I don't know if we're owning it that way. And so those three things together are key ingredients to, I believe, decoupling some of the challenges we're having in the workforce around mindset. Now, there are other things that we can do around, livable wages and all of those things. But I don't think people, I didn't come to the work for pay, and I don't stay for pay. I came to the work because I was interested in doing this as my life's work, and I stay because I find value in the work that I do, and I know that people respect that. And I think that if we would focus on trying to make people continue to attract those people to this work, and then be respectful of those who stay, and give them some level of agency and value in the work, then I believe that they will become better ambassadors and attract others to this work over time. And then a very simple thing that we need to do is, who's the smartest and brightest person in your family? Think of who that is, and then encourage them to be an educator. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.